Thanks, John. I'm really pleased to be here opening today's summit. I think we're here because we agree with today's premise that equality is the single most important ethical issue for business today. But we're also here because we believe that warm words are not enough. What's needed is action. In every role that I've ever had, whether it was regional director for Oxfam, chief exec of London First, my current role, board member at Standard Chartered Bank, equality has been in my mind. And I've seen a lot of good work in that time, increasing recognition of the need to change. By the time I stopped going to Davos in my role at Save the Children, inequality had risen to the top of the list of worries cited on the entry poll of participants. But as Prince Zayed, the outgoing UN Tsar on human rights, recently tweeted, every year it's the same. 5 days of soul-searching, followed by 360 of business as usual. Our challenge is to make businesses act differently during all 365 days, and I think we can. Of course, it's not easy, but if businesses can see embracing diversity and inclusion as enlightened self-interest, I think we might have a chance. I wanted to share with you something that Bill Winters, Group Chief Exec of Standard Chartered, and I have discussed often. Bill believes passionately that an inclusive working environment is good for colleagues and good for clients. Standard Chartered's purpose statement commits the bank to drive commerce and diversity, to commerce and prosperity through our unique diversity. That's why we've embarked on an ambitious program this year to upskill all 16,000 people leaders in inclusive leadership. Bill also believes that we can't take progress for granted. Of course, we're, in a way, inherently diverse because we're in all these countries around the world. But although Standard Chartered is on track to have 30% women in senior roles, a key metric for the top team, he believes we need to double down. And I agree. Business needs to recognise that we've made a start, but then commit to do more. Of course, the need for action is clearest on the front line. At my time with Oxfam, I could see on the front line, really, what inequality was all about, not least the impact of not having access to education. But the point is that equality and doing business with integrity isn't just a matter for organisations like Oxfam. It's a matter for all employers, because they can only exist if employees choose to work for them. And today, the ethical outlook of an employer is the number one priority for any prospective employee. Employees want to work for purposeful businesses, businesses that take their social responsibilities seriously. I chair the Sustainable Business Committees at both the bank and at BT. And in both cases, the chief executive sits on this committee and drives real change throughout their organisation. At Standard Chartered, this means building a culture of inclusion that will enable it to be the best place to work, the best place to bank, and contribute to creating prosperous communities. An example of that was when we announced that we would no longer finance new coal-fired power plants anywhere in the world, going for sustainable energy instead. Another example is preferential credit that we offer to women entrepreneurs in Bangladesh, where they're not able to have the security of owning land or property. And internally, the bank launched a fair pay charter that commits to paying a fair living wage for all its employees across the world, even in countries where the concept of a living wage is something that we're having to create. Enlightened self-interest. Yes, these things do improve our reputation, but they also make a clear positive impact in the world. People will be breathing cleaner air, building stronger communities and earning fair wages because of decisions that we made. Now, that's not about PR. It's about doing the right thing, and you become a more attractive employer as a result. A similar shift is taking place when it comes to women in business. Part of my job at London First is to keep my finger on the pulse of what London's employers are thinking. And when I first joined a couple of years ago, I went round and talked to all of our chief executives, and not a single one brought up diversity as a key issue. When I repeated that exercise earlier this year, they all do. Now, what's changed? The requirement to publish data. What gets measured gets managed, we all know. It also gets propagated. There's no way that pay gaps would have been news 5 years ago. But today, reporting has built pressure. And if you take diversity as seriously as I believe it needs to be taken, you reap the rewards. My view is that it's a leadership issue, a performance issue. You succeed if you create an environment where everybody is able to maximize their potential, where everyone is valued and respected for the unique diversity that they bring. The best leaders that I've known have not been afraid to surround themselves by people who are stronger than them in different ways. And they've also been the ones who understand that their focus should not be on the next quarterly results, but on the long-term picture that they leave behind. Now, speaking of the long term, another issue that preoccupies me is keeping London the open, diverse, and vibrant city that we love. To do that, we need to look at what enlightened self-interest looks like at a city level. Of course, it's having the best schools, great transport links, decent housing, but most important of all, it's about opportunities for people. People make London what it is, and 1/3 of all Londoners were born overseas. We must ensure that Brexit doesn't get in the way of maintaining this diversity. Now, I could give a whole nother speech on that, but in any case, skills gaps still exist. So at the same time as keeping London open, we must provide the best education and training for the people who already live here. We need a plan that does both, something that we've done a lot of work on at London First. One, admit that migration is desirable, but handle it sensibly. Better data collection, a more realistic salary cap, variable visa lengths, and unrestricted access for exceptional talent. Two, recognise the temporary nature of study and the contribution of London's 100,000 plus international students and classify them as visitors, not as permanent migrants. Three, make education more skills focused so that local people can have the best chance of getting even the most specialist jobs. On that last point, one of the things I'm most proud of that London First does is Skills London, the UK's largest annual careers and jobs fair. It's an inspirational event that last year showcased over 5,000 different opportunities for school leavers. It's interactive, and you can try everything from bricklaying to banking, and I think there were even some Bloomberg terminals there last year. And our members who exhibit, like Bloomberg and Standard Chartered and others, contribute to the fares to bus school children in from some of the poorest neighbourhoods in London who wouldn't otherwise be able to come. It's at the Excel Centre, but that's the sort of barrier that we're looking at, that some children, some communities are facing in London. Now, that too is enlightened self-interest. Seeing young people's eyes widen as they learn about career paths that they had no idea even existed. And then a few years down the line, you get more skills, a wider pool helping British businesses to thrive. Enlightened self-interest is the way forward for our capital, for our businesses, and for our entire economy. And we can start with diversity, doubling down, as Bill would say, making our employers genuinely representative, genuinely open and genuinely attractive to the workforce of the future. Not just because it is the right thing to do, but because it's good business. Thank you, and enjoy the conference.